Today, we're going to talk about the tools that I use to shoot B-roll on this channel. And yes, this is seriously something I use. So this morning I was taking a rest day, taking a little break from running for the day, and in that time I decided to work on a project that required me to use pretty much all the different tools that I have for my camera, and so I thought that would be a perfect time while it's all out to give you guys a look kind of behind the curtain and how I shoot my B-roll. Now the first thing that is most important for shooting B-roll is something to shoot with, and that's for me the Sony a6300. That's the camera that you're looking at right now. It is the a6300 with a prime lens f2.8 16mm on the APS-C center, which gives it about a 24mm equivalent, I think. It's a nice wide angle lens that lets me get really close to the shoe. And for most of the B-roll shots that I shoot, I get really close and I just handhold the camera. So the shoe will be on a table, and then I'll put the camera on the table as well and just slide it back and forth or side to side, or maybe I'll rotate it. And the key for me is friction. And so a lot of times when I'm holding the camera, I'll put both my hands on the sides of it, and these parts, these pads of my hands, will also sit on the table itself, and will slide all of it back and forth. And so while my hands might be jittery, because a lot of the B-roll that I shoot, it's like at 4:30 in the morning and I'm hopped up on caffeine, so there's a lot of jitter. So I'll lean them against the table and I'll slide the whole thing and try to be as smooth as possible. It's not perfect, but I usually shoot at 1080 and 120 frames per second, so I can slow down that footage in slow motion, and slow motion absolves a lot of sins. And so that's kind of the key for the most of the B-roll that I shoot. And for most of the videos that I've made, that's all I used. Okay. And then from there, I went and got a gimbal for the camera because I found that I wanted more types of movements. I wanted to get more of the top of the shoe or to be able to kind of fly over the shoe. So I did pick up a gimbal. And the one that I have is the Zhiyun Crane M. And it's the smaller one designed for cameras like the Sony a6300 or other smaller cameras. But the Sony a6300 is just a touch too heavy for that gimbal, and so whenever I want to point the camera downward, it'll like work, and then sometimes after a while it'll just give up and reset itself back up to like the horizon. And so it's not perfect, but it does pretty much what I need it to do, which I'll use the gimbal for, there's a joystick on it, so I can make it pan really smoothly and steadily. So if there's something where I want to get a little bit higher up because it has a handle and it makes you kind of lift the camera up a little bit, I can kind of point the lens down and rotate very smoothly back and forth or up and down. Those shots work really well on the gimbal, and they're really hard to do handheld. There's always kind of like some jitteriness there, so it's not perfectly smooth. A gimbal is a way to go. I could probably also do it with a fluid ball head, a lot of those motions, and so that's probably what I would get if I was to get something else at this point, or if I had never gotten the gimbal. But there's other things that you can only use, I can only get with a gimbal, and that's when I fly completely over the shoe and back. And usually what I'll do is I'll hold the gimbal and the camera really steadily against my chest, using my elbows as kind of props, and move my body and not my hands, because this is shaky, but if I just do this, that's a little bit more stable and controllable. So that's kind of what I do, or if I need to move it, I can do that as well. The thing that I love doing with the gimbal is combining motion with rotation, right? And so the prime example of that is one of my favorite kind of shots to get is when I start looking from below and look down at the shoe as it goes. So the shoe kind of stays in the center of the frame the whole time, but the camera is moving. So as the camera is moving up, the pitch of the camera goes down, and so you get this nice kind of effect of kind of motion tracking the shoe, and I really like to be able to do that. Those are my favorite things that I can only do with the gimbal. If I tried to handhold it, it would look really jittery, or I'd have to run it through like a couple of levels of warp stabilization, which after a while just starts to make the image look a little bit gummy and gross. And so it doesn't really work. The gimbal is perfect for that. Do I really need it? No. Probably at this point, now I use it for like 1 out of every 3 videos that I shoot, and a lot of times I only use it if I have time to get it out. It takes time to set up, it takes time to balance. I've gotten pretty good at balancing the Sony a6300. It's the only camera that I put on it. And so it's not too hard, but it's just more steps, and the batteries need to be charged and things like that. And that's where this monstrosity has been really, really helpful to me, believe it or not. Let me take it apart, and so I can kind of go over the chronology of like where I got the different parts. And so first, to just explain what this is essentially 4 rollerblade wheels connected with 2 axles and a piece of cut steel, I think. And then there's holes in it that fit a 1/4 mount. And so normally originally I put in the middle this ball head. And so I was able to put the camera, and this also has a 1/4 mount. And when you loosen it, this becomes really malleable, and you can position it however you want, lock it down, and then you have a static position that I could then use the roller skate to move the camera a little bit higher than table level, so I could get a different angle and move it towards or away or side to side or rotating around, because the wheels, the axles, can bend. And so I was able to get a variety of different kind of angles using the roller skate and just the ball head. But then at that point, I realized that I wasn't getting enough light on my B-roll shots. So I added this LED light. It's by Light Out. It takes these Sony batteries, which are pretty much like a universal, and you can get them on Amazon super, super cheap. And this one, I like it because you can adjust the intensity of the light and also the temperature of the light. You can get really yellow or really bright white light, so that's always a nice plus. I like daylight. I don't like things that are too yellow, and so it gives me a nice clean light, and I like it. And I decided that rather than kind of putting it somewhere or trying to like create a lit studio in my living room, which was going to be really problematic, I would just mount it to the roller skate, so that way it would stay in the same kind of relation or distance from the camera at all times, no matter where I moved it. And so I thought I would do that, and so I moved this ball head to be underneath the light. So now I can position the light, rotate it, angle it however I need to, and the camera sits on this friction arm in the front. And so what this friction arm is, it has this knob, and when you loosen it, it can be bent and moved into a variety of different shapes and configurations. And then when you have it exactly where you want it, then you tighten it, and there's friction. There's these teeth that are in here that keep everything locked into place. So then once it's in there, it doesn't move. So you can lock it in and get a very stable position as you then move the roller skate forward and back or rotate it. And then with the light on the back, and then I've got a situation where now I have something like a light that follows and tracks the camera no matter where the camera goes. So this is not perfect. It's not professional grade, but it works. With that friction arm, I can get the camera up a little bit higher for those shots where I want to try to fly over stuff. And because the arm has some length to it, I can put the camera out in front of the wheels of the rollerblade or this skate dolly thing, and so that way, even though the shoe's here, the camera still gets to go pretty far over the edge of the shoe. And so that's been really helpful for me as well. And so that doesn't require any batteries. It's a fraction of the cost of a gimbal, and it just seems to work because I'm usually on a smooth surface like the table that my kids do like their homework and drawing on. That's where all the B-roll gets shot, and everything just really works well together, and I've been enjoying shooting with it. And it's gotten to the point that now, even when I travel, I disassemble the whole thing and just throw it in my bag. It takes up less space altogether than the gimbal did. And so that's really been convenient. But that's it. That's pretty much everything that I use to shoot B-roll for this channel, for all the products that I've been taking a look at. I know some of you are working on channels of your own and are filming your own stuff. And so I get a lot of questions in the comments about how I'm doing this or that. So I thought today, a rest day, would be a perfect time to go over that. If you have any other questions, feel free to leave them in the comments. I'd love to talk to you guys down there. But before I go today, I want to talk about today's charity runner. Today's charity runner is Laura. She's #liverrunning on Twitter. And for 2018, she decided she would dedicate the entire year to a series of challenges, each one more difficult than the last, starting with an overall goal of running 1,000 kilometers for the year and culminating with a goal of running a 24-hour endurance race. The last update she had, she was trying to run her first marathon ever. Unfortunately, she did have to pull out at the 22-mile mark. But her goal for the year overall is to raise 2,000 pounds for Leeds Cares, which is an organization that provides support for people who need liver transplants. Her mother was someone who was able to benefit from a liver transplant very recently, and so this is a cause that means quite a bit to Laura. She's very close to her fundraising goal, and so I've donated $5 to help her out, and I'll post a link to her information and her fundraising information in the description. You can check out her cause and also the results from the various runs she's run throughout the year in support of and trying to raise money for other people who would need a liver transplant. So a very worthy cause. Go ahead and check that out. Now that's all I have for you today. Thanks so much everybody for watching, and I will see you guys tomorrow.
Yo, what's going on?